Hello, I'm Gavin, and I'm here to tell you once again about a very special friend of mine from the planet Invenia. Once upon a time, as you may remember, a very clever and important bear named Seymour was sent on a very special and important mission to keep his galaxy safe. One of the worlds Seymour visited was the frozen planet Tenka, where the famous beautiful blue Kori Roos lived. Now, Kori means ice and Ru means dragon. The home of these marvelous ice dragons was a magnificent crystal palace deep under the frozen ground so that the dragons could keep their snaking bodies nice and cool. And they lived for thousands and thousands of years, making Seymour feel rather young, even though the dragons only ate flavoured snow. The other creatures who lived on Tenka were the blind marmodesk beetles. A little like servants might look after a rich person's mansion, these precious pearly beetles looked after the dragons in their palace, working non-stop, eating as they went by licking snow mites off the dragon's shiny skin, keeping their jewel-like scales all shining. The beetles also gathered up every bit of dust from the purple amethyst crystals so that the crystals could keep giving their magic powers to the dragons. Wouldn't you love to have magic powers? What would your magical power be? Now, the teeny tiny bits of dirt the marmodesk beetles collected were put into pouches on their legs, and when the pouches were full, the beetles would speed off down long, dark, twisty tunnels to smaller caves where the baby marmodesk beetles lived, while they were still fat little caterpillary grubs with smiley yellow faces. The adult beetles would pile up the dust they'd gathered into snuggly sandy blankets for the grubs to sleep under. It needs to be said, the young dragons were especially fond of the marmodesks because the beetles also collected frost berries to flavour the dragonlings' ice lollies. But there was a big problem on Tenka, and it made the dragonlings very sad. The marmodesk beetles were getting really poorly and they didn't know why. Even the grown-up dragons, who are very wise, which means clever with your head and your heart, couldn't work it out. The Kori Roos had lived on their twinkly and peaceful world of snow for more years than anyone could remember, and the marmodesk beetles had always lived happily with them, not minding the cold. Yet, the only way that their grubs would grow and change into adult marmodesk beetles was if they were kept nice and warm. But even with their sandy nests, the marmodesk grubs still complained of cold. Until one day, a certain travelling salesman came by. He was a right old lizard, that salesman. Green scaly skin, gold tooth, fake smile. If there was anything you needed, that salesman could get it for you and sell it for twice the price than anywhere else. And if there was anything you didn't need, he'd get you that as well and also sell that for way more than it was worth. When he arrived on Tenka and saw those little shivering marmodesk grubs, he said right out, "I know exactly what you need, heaters, and I know just the place I can get them. They'll be invented on planet Invenia. I could go there and pick some up for you and I'd give you a real good price for them." And before you know it, he putted off in his battered green space Cadillac and returned from Invenia with some nifty new grub grow heaters the inventor bears had made for him to sell. Roos, like all other dragons, are incredibly rich. Dragons sleep on beds made of jewels and treasure after all, and so the Kori Roos bought the heaters off the salesman, and they also bought a bunch of other things they didn't need. After the lizard salesman left Tenka with bags full of treasure in his boot. It was not long before the Marmadesk beetles started feeling unwell. They were woozy and would bump into each other. They had tummy aches and they felt like being sick, and their clever little brains hurt real bad. What to do? When the dragons couldn't work out why their excellent beetles were ill, they grew angry. Nothing was wrong with the beetles until that salesman had come. They decided to throw out all the stuff that they had bought, except for the grub grow heaters, which the beetles said worked wonders to keep their little ones warm. Yet the beetles were still getting ill. Then the superstellar space rocket arrived on Rocket Tinker, and the team, along with Safety Seymour, was taken to the ruler of the Kori-Roos, King Kosetsu. Enthusiastically, the rocket captain began to tell the huge, sparkly blue king that the inventor bears could create loads of stuff for him and his dragons. And oh my, was that the last thing the ice dragons wanted to hear. Before he knew it, the rocket captain was blasted with breath of bright blue flame from King Kosetsu's mouth and instantly frozen into a block of ice. "I freeze all of you!" boomed King Kosetsu. "Your inventions will make my friends even more unwell!" And as fast as they tried to get away, the rest of Seymour's team of inventors and engineers were frozen too. Seymour was a safety bear though, and he could see that running away was far from safe. It put you right in the path of King Dragon's frosty blue flames. So Seymour ran straight at the king instead, jumped and wrapped his arm tightly around the dragon's neck and hung on for dear life. The other dragons couldn't grab Seymour with their sharp claws or they might hurt the king, and they couldn't shoot their flames or they'd freeze the king. "Get off!" roared the king dragon. "No!" shouted Seymour. "It's not safe hanging on your neck, but it's even less safe to let go." "Get off!" roared the dragon again, but this time a little croaky. "I can't shoot my ice flames." "Well, that's rather the point," offered Seymour. "But if you promise not to freeze me and listen to what I have to say, then I'll let you go." The king promised, and Seymour slid down and landed with a plump at the feet of the massive metallic blue dragon. Then, out from behind King Kosetsu, the beautiful queen of the dragons stepped and inquired, "What is your name, brave bear?" Seymour put his hands on his hips and said with pride, "I'm Safety Seymour, and I'm here to make your world a safer place to be." "The Safety Seymour?" asked the queen, looking in surprise at her king, who was tapping his claws together thoughtfully. "Well, yes," stammered Seymour. "I suppose I am the Safety Seymour." And he explained that he was pretty sure that he was the only one of him. In fact, that was often the problem. But even if he was only one bear, he would do whatever it was to help the king and queen make Rocket Tinker safe. "How wonderful," said the Grand Dragon Queen with a sigh. And then she bowed her slender head and introduced herself. "I am Queen Suno." The young dragons all rushed forward to see this famous bear, who the whole galaxy had heard of. And they oohed and they ahed, which made the old bear's purple cheeks go a little bit pink. "If I knew we were going to have an important guest," said the stunning Queen Suno, "I would have seen the place looked better." She was a dazzling royal blue dragon with a purple amethyst necklace and a diamond crown and eyes that glistened like sapphires. Then Seymour saw what made her eyes glisten. Her sad eyes were full of icicle tears. When Seymour asked why she was sad, the queen told him all about her precious beetles being ill. That's why the palace didn't look so sparkly as usual, because the Marmadesks couldn't do their jobs properly. "Do you think you can help us, Sir Seymour?" she implored. Seymour had never been called a sir before, and his chest puffed out as he said, "I'll do my best." The serious bear got straight to work, testing and checking one of the grub grow heaters outside, but it seemed to be working fine. Seymour couldn't find anything out of place. So he reported back to the king and queen saying, "I just don't understand. What could be wrong? The flames in the grub grow heaters are burning nice, warm, orangey red." "What color did you say the flames are?" interrupted Queen Suno in shock. "Nothing in my world burns orange unless our dragon is ill and can't burn his fuel properly. Healthy flames are always blue." Seymour was very surprised to hear that, seeing as he had been to so many worlds and seen so many machines and appliances with orange flames. Mind you, now that he thought of it, many of the creatures who had those appliances with orange flames also complained of headaches and tummy aches, and oh boy, they also said they felt dizzy. Seymour asked what was so bad about orange flames, and the Azure Queen said that she wasn't sure. All she knew was that a sick dragon had to be taken outside, or his orange flames would poison everyone in the cave. The outside air would set the poorly dragons right, and once again, when they were strong and able to breathe with full force, so that they could burn their flames a nice icy blue, they would go back inside. "One of Koiru's magical gifts is we can sense when there are orange flames about. Perhaps that's why we have been getting so angry," mused the queen with one claw scratching her chin. "We could sense an enemy in the caves, but we could not see where it was. Now you tell me the flames on the grub grow heaters are orange. No wonder we have been getting moody. Poor Mama Desks. We have to get them outside for fresh air." In all the queen said, there seemed to be a clue. Seymour told her that he just had to figure out what it was. King Kusetsu had been listening carefully to everything his queen and Seymour said, and now he leant forward and said, "Safety Seymour, if you can stop our beetles from being sick, I will reward you greatly." "Thank you, Your Highness," said Seymour. "I don't need rewards. To make things safe is my job." Seymour decided he should sit inside an empty grub grow pod with a heater on so that he could try and sense what was wrong with the orange flames. He got ready with his pen and his clipboard to take notes, but it wasn't too long before he began to feel ill. First, he got a headache, but he hadn't drunk too little and he had had plenty of sleep and he wasn't tired. Then his tummy began to ache and he felt sick, but he couldn't remember eating anything bad. Finally, he felt quite dizzy, even though he was sitting down. He tried to think about what was making him feel bad, but his head felt all fuzzy. "Well, I might not be a dragon with orange flames," thought Seymour, "but I think I better go outside." And when he got outside, he breathed deep. All that fresh oxygen cleared his head, and in no time he felt good again. So he took several more deep breaths. Then he stopped, tilted his head to one side. "Hang on," he thought as he stood in the snow. "That's it! Oxygen! It's invisible! And a gas! You can't hear it, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't touch it, and yet it makes you feel fantastic!" Maybe the orange flames were creating a different kind of gas, one that made you feel poorly. Seymour ran back into the cave and he found the rest of the bear team all thawed and dry, but thoroughly bored because King Kusetsu had forbidden them from making any new devices on Rokotenka. Excitedly, Seymour told Captain Bear and the others what he thought was happening with the orange flames and said he was going to the throne room to tell the Dragon King and Queen right away. A few minutes later, the engineer bears saw Safety Seymour running towards them, carrying a grub grow heater. "Time to go!" he shouted, and they sprinted back to the rocket. As they flew away, the rocket captain said, "It's not like you to run away, Safety Seymour." "I'm not running away," replied the bear very seriously. "I'm doing my job." When they got back to Invino, Seymour didn't go to his wonderful wife Lucinda at home. He went straight to his office and he locked himself in his laboratory. He wouldn't even answer his berry phone when his family called. Everyone was very worried about him. Was he frightened because he couldn't make Rocketenka safe? Was he too embarrassed to come out and tell everyone? 3 days later, though, he emerged from his office, and even for Seymour, he looked very serious. "We have a new enemy," he declared. "Carbon monoxide." "But what is carbon monoxide?" asked his grandchildren and the other safety assistants. Seymour explained that it is a bad gas, and it's created when fuels like coal, wood, or other gases aren't burned properly. "But lots of our inventions burn with those fuels," said Boss Bear worriedly. "How can we tell if we're making this carbon monoxide?" "Carbon monoxide," corrected Safety Seymour, "and the flames will tell you," answered Seymour confidently, telling the workers that he had run loads of different tests and found that flames burning red, yellow, or orange created the bad gas, which could give you carbon monoxide poisoning. And you would know you were getting poisoned if you had a headache, felt sick, and got dizzy, or even fainted. "We need to make sure our inventions are safe," declared Safety Seymour. Then he put one hand on his hip and he held the other hand up and waved it in the air just like a flame and said with authority, "The flame must burn!" And he thrust his arm into the air. Blue! And right then, he looked just like a superhero. Safety Seymour taught his assistants all about carbon monoxide and its dangers and showed them how to keep everybody safe. And the inventor bears did their part too, creating brand new devices to detect bad gas. They called these detectors carbon monoxide alarms. All over the galaxy, there were inventions that would need fixing and creatures everywhere who would need carbon monoxide alarms to warn them if there was bad gas in their homes or buildings. So, Boss Bear's team of engineer bears needed to make a lot of alarms. Seymour's safety assistants, who he had trained all over the galaxy on other planets, would also need to be taught about carbon monoxide and its dangers too. But the first place Seymour said he was going to go was Rocketenka. He had promised the king and queen he would find a way to destroy their enemy and help the Marmadesk grubs stay warm and healthy too. The Superstellar Space Team climbed aboard their rocket ship once more, loading it up with as many carbon monoxide alarms as it could carry, and blasted off to the bright white world of Rocketenka. As soon as Seymour arrived, he shared with the king and queen what he had discovered, and with their royal permission, he got the engineer and inventor bears to begin work right away on new grub grow heaters that burn their fuel properly, so the flames were true blue. The young dragons were very interested in all that was going on. Hence, seeing as they were so eager and very quick to learn, Seymour taught the dragonlings how to be his safety assistants, and he got them to place the carbon monoxide alarms in every grub grow pod where there was a heater in it, being sure the alarms were always placed at least 2 to 3 meters away and high up. When the job was done, and all the Marmadesk beetles were safe and healthy again, the queen lifted Seymour up in the air and gave him a big dragon kiss. Then she gently pressed her forehead against his. Seymour closed his eyes and felt tingly all over as a magical ball of blue energy surrounded him and the queen. Then Seymour felt the Queen let go of him, and he opened his eyes, thinking that she'd put him down, but she hadn't. He was floating. "Yes," said the smiling Queen, "you can fly. I have given you some of my magical power so that you can fly to the rescue whenever people and creatures are not safe." Seymour looked down at his team and the dragons and the beetles with a great big grin on his face, and he zoomed around the palace in a purple flash of lightning. Woo-hoo! When he finally settled back down to the ground, the king, too, bowed down to Seymour and placed his forehead gently against the bear's. This time, Seymour felt his orange muzzle and his tummy tingling, and he could sense when it stopped and the kind king had raised his head what magical power had been given to him this time. From now on, the old bear would be able to feel in his gut when there were orange flames about, and he would be able to follow his nose right to where the danger was. With these superpowers, Safety Seymour really was a superhero. Then King Kosetsu and Queen Sunu threw a great, gigantic party. There were ice slides and snowball fights and a crystal light disco, of course. There were also ice lollies. As all the Koi-Roos and the Marmadesks celebrated that the magical bear who had made their world an even safer place to be. Safety Seymour, coming to your galaxy soon.